So I did a series of experiments, and I know people have been like, "Man, I'm getting so many boots, gloves, and belts, and what's the best way to get DS?" Well, you got to play an archer because you get more bow drops, or how do I get this? Because you got to play a mage because you get more mage drops. Uh, I'm going to show you what my experiment revealed as far as drop rates go, and how much of what you hear is false and what is actually true using the scientific method, which is test and retest, and me using math and logging my drops of 300 runs. So, the parameters of this uh, are I ran, now I'm going to put everything up on the screen. I ran Mage Tower 4 300 times. I ran it 100 times with my Druid, 100 times with my Warrior, and 100 times with my Mage. And I logged all of the drops, and I separated the drops into different categories. One being, well, there are 10 different types of legendary drops that you can get. 8 of them are armor, one of them is weapon, and the other is items. So it worked out to where there's 10. There's 10 types of drops, and that can easily be divided in percentage wise. So the average for drops should be 10% per category. And we're going to give a plus or minus 5 for that 5% because of, just the way percentages work. So, yeah, we're going to get into what these numbers found. And what I want y'all to be conscious of is how much bullshit you hear and actually what what actually happens when you start logging what you do and what you get as drops. And I played 3 separate characters just to make sure. So I'm going to jump over to all the Druid information now. So yeah, I'll play a little bit of Druid action in the background while I put up numbers. All right. Hello. Now, I want to address this first before we do anything else. Based on the empirical evidence and the scientific method, there is no correlation between which class you play and which drops you get. There's none. It is all 100% RNG, meaning you're just as likely to get a mage drop on an archer as you are a warrior to get a mage or an archer drop. It doesn't matter. It's all 100% RNG. And my data suggests there is zero correlation between which class you play. People who tell you this have not done this experiment, and they're going off confirmation bias. I decided to do this experiment because I've always said, no, it doesn't matter which class you play. All drops are random. People, they like, no, that's not true. That's not. But now I can actually prove it because I have the empirical evidence to back it up. So, once again, it does not matter which class you play. Drops are going to be the same across the board in the same way that randomness is the same. So if you see that you're getting bows on an archer, you gotta kind of be like, okay, is this confirmation bias? Because more than likely it is, because you can get bows on anybody. Just know that. Just because you have an archer doesn't mean you're more likely going to get a DS. Okay, just know that it doesn't matter which class you play. Drops are random. Okay, now that that's over and clear, and no way we can confuse that, let's go into the Druid numbers. Now, just to reiterate what this experiment was, I ran MT4, 100 times with my Druid, my Mage, and my Warrior. So I separated the drops into 4 categories, and I'm going to put all the numbers up. The 4 categories are armor, weapons, items, and BBG. So armor is obviously the armor, and since there are 8 types of armor and 10 types of items, 80% of your drops should be armor. See how that works? Now, because there's just weapons, 10% of your drops should be weapons, and the same goes for items because, you know, the math, 1 out of 10 is 10%. Now we get into the fourth category. This one is important because since the update, people have been like, man, I've been getting hell a lot of belts, boots, and gloves. That's all I get. That's all my drops, man. Well, I decided to test that. And based on percentages, belts, boots, and gloves should be 30% of your drops. If, you know, because that is 3 out of the 10. So that's 30%. So we're going to see what happened with all this. Let's get into the Druid numbers. So, with armor, the percentage of armor drops for the Druid was 82.5%. If you notice, 80% plus or minus 5% is the target range. So it is right on the target range. Nothing wrong with it. Weapon's a little bit low on the Druid, but it's still within target range. It's at 6.25%. And different, you know, that's just the way percentages works, and that's just what happens sometimes. Some are lower, some are higher, but if it's well within the target range, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And then items was at 11.25%. So again, it is perfectly in the target range. And the BBG, 33.75%. Again, well within the target range. So, what's going on here? It looks like some things are actually what they're supposed to be. Well, we'll see. Let's move on over to the Warrior. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over, you know, just saying a bunch of stuff that doesn't need to be said, because you already introed everything and said, you know, what the categories are. So let's just get right into these Warrior numbers. So, Warrior numbers for armor, 82.8%. Well within range. Weapons, an even 11%. Again, well within range. And now, items took a dive instead of weapons with a Warrior, but it's well within range at 6.25%. Okay, so Zyzix, what is the BBG on a Warrior? Well, let me tell you this. 29.7%. It's actually lower than what it's supposed to be, but again, well within range. So I ask you, what the fuck is going on? Well, it gets even more interesting as we move on to the Mage. So let's go. Moving on to the Mage. Now, did the Mage offer anything different than the Druid or Warrior? Well, let's find out. And I will say that my first time to have a missed target range is right here with my Mage. And it's crazy because it's actually on armor. So, armor came out to 70.2%. So it missed target range by, what is that, 4.8%? Which, again, okay, you got to look at percentages. I mean, yes, it missed that target range, but also percentages are meant to be run over thousands of times. and this was done 100. It was enough to give me the empirical evidence that I needed, but more than likely, you're going to have a missed target somewhere. So that was my missed target range. So armor was only 70.2%, which is crazy. I always felt like I got more armor on my mage than anyone else, but you know, numbers don't lie. So that's my numbers right there. Now let's move on to weapons. Crazy enough, weapons and items were actually the same number, so I'll go ahead and do both of them for the mage. Weapons and items were both at 14.9%, so just inside the target range, but still within the target range. Go figure. Everything is pretty much adding up the way it's supposed to so far, but let's take a final look at BBG for the mage. So what is the BBG on the mage? It was actually 25.4%. So it was on the low end of the target range. And that could have had something to do with the lower amount of armor that I got. But yeah, the boots, belts, and glove percentage was only 25.4%. Again, within range, but lower than expected. So what happens when we put all these numbers together? So let's find out, and I'll go ahead and let y'all see what the averages of all these are. So let's look at these totals, and again, let's look at the empirical evidence. So the average percentage for drops goes as this. Items. Now, again, items should be at 10%. Now, keep in mind, all these are plus or minus 5. Items should be at 10%. It averaged out to 10.8%. Weapons should be at 10%. It averaged out to 10.8%. And armor should be at 80%. It averaged out to 78.5%. Now, what about BBG? Well, boots, belts, and gloves averaged out to 29.6% of the drops, which, if you notice, is below what it's supposed to be. So, you are not getting more boots, belts, and gloves. You are getting confirmation bias. So, just know 30% of your drops should be boots, belts, and gloves, and it is right at 30%. What can we take away from this? Well, I ran this 100 times on 3 different characters. Figured that should be enough empirical evidence. And I think my data speaks for itself, what I got. Everything was kind of same across the board, across the characters. Most of my drops were generic drops, meaning it didn't belong to anybody specific, any class specifically. On all the characters, most of the drops were generic. They could have gone to really anybody, or just like shitty drops, stuff like that. That's mostly what it is. And as a matter of fact, most of the drops didn't even line up with the class I was playing. Like on my Druid, I think I got more warrior and cleric, and let's see, I'm looking at necromancer drops than anything. Let's see, I was the warrior. Let's see, I got the most cleric. I got cleric, warrior, and necromancer the most. Okay, that's for warrior. For Druid, I got warrior, archer, and mage the most. And then for mage, I got archer, warrior, and basically that's it. Archer and warrior the most. Some necromancer, cleric mixed in there. Yeah. So again, my data shows that there is no reason you should ever believe that which class you play affects your drops. It's 100% random. There is no conspiracy going on with boots, belts, and gloves. None. All drops are right where they should be at the percentage base. So they are all even. They are all within target range. Just know that. So don't use your confirmation bias of what you're getting to, I guess, get you all mad and pissed about not getting drops and that drop rates are rigged and something needs to be done, because no, actually drop percentages are exactly on point. And what can I say? That's why I like empirical data. And it speaks for itself. So y'all have a good one. Bitch in the comments if you want to.